Welcome to Millennials Meet Liberty, your source for searing hot libertarian takes on the world's weekly headlines. Here's your host, Colt Thompson.
Hey everybody, Colt Thompson here with another fucking epic episode of Millennials Meet Liberty, episode numero 14. So we're chugging right along here. I'm feeling really good about this podcast. We're developing a pretty damn big following early and often as I record these episodes. More people just keep piling on the bandwagon to learn a little bit more about liberty from the lens of a libertarian and a millennial one at that. So today's episode is going to be focused on an educational topic, namely education. So here we go. I want to talk about the student loan crisis, the student loan bubble, the cost of college in the United States. Just have a 10,000-foot view of all of these things and how it pertains to and affects people from the ages of about 16 on upward. So lot to unpack here about college, whether it's a four-year degree or a master's degree or a PhD. But I wanted to just take time to explain why college costs so much, why people are going there in herds as sheeple, and why people need to stop going to college as much, or if they're going to college, to go with a more wise and intelligent plan about what they are looking to study, the degree they're looking to earn, and the ROI they're looking to achieve after they collect their diploma. So I think we can all agree as Americans and as millennials that college and the debt load, moreover, is substantial and an utter shit show. So you see a lot of people coming down the aisles, whether they acquired a bachelor's degree or they earned a master's degree or whatever degree they got, you see them with their caps, and oftentimes as a gag or as a joke, they put their debt load amount on the top of their graduation cap. So in America today, and by rough estimates, the average undergraduate debt level is approximately $30,000 when it's all said and done. A lot of students take more than 4 years. Sometimes they take 4.5, 4 and change, all the way up till 5, 6, 7 years to earn their bachelor's degree. And then moreover, if they pin themselves to getting a graduate degree, whether it's through a student loan offering or their own money paying their way or their parents or what have you, they end up tacking out another 30, 40, 50, sometimes over $100,000 for that degree. So when all things are said and done, people are entering the workforce in their mid or late 20s with these college degrees in hand, and they're entering with a substantial debt burden. Now we're talking about the average American here and the average college graduate in terms of household income that they were brought up in. So there's so many issues as to why college costs so much, but there's really one, namely, and it's the government. I'm going to flesh that out a little bit later. But I do want to speak to all millennials here. So I'm going to make this very, very clear. There are some people who were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, whether they know it or not. There are people whose parents have paid for everything their entire lives, up to and including their food, clothing, car, experiences, what have you. Maybe they went on more family vacations. Maybe they had 2 homes or a lake house. And that's fine. And many of those types of people don't realize how lucky they are and are not very grateful for what their parents have given them, but that's beside the point. So there's a lot of people who are born into the lap of luxury who don't really need to worry about these types of things. And that's fine. And then there's the bigger part of the bandwidth there that are people who are just average, whose parents, scrape by a little bit, maybe had a little bit of leftover money to live a fun life, but by and large are pretty humble middle-class people. And so their children had to kind of pay their own way or take out student loans or get some sort of supplemental assistance from some of their other heirs to pay for college. And then there's the dirt poor group of college students who literally grew up in nothing, maybe broken homes, maybe grew up in a trailer park, didn't have a lot of means, and potentially joined the military or were offered student loans financing that otherwise they wouldn't have because their family qualified. Maybe they had a single parent household and their single parent didn't earn that much income. So the costs were passed along to the government charity, in air quotes, instead of taking out loans. So there was some type of grant offered to these people. But by and large, you're dealing with different types of students who go to college. So you have very rich, privileged students. You have, like I said, the greater bandwidth of just the average American student. And then you have the poor students who grew up, like I said, maybe in a trailer park or in the ghetto or with a single parent household or just limited financial means. So everybody comes to college with a very, very different background. Hell, they could even be foreign, international students. So I want to just put that out there because I'm speaking to all millennials right now, people interested in learning about liberty and free markets. And in this episode, why college costs so much and the negative consequences society bears when the government gets involved in financing college, especially for those people who shouldn't be going at all. So I want to make that clear because as millennials, a lot of us emerge and their friends and their peers and hell, even their boyfriends or girlfriends, some of them have no debt at all. And this is really a non-issue to them on a micro basis. But on a macro basis, it's a big deal for the average person. So let's talk about why college costs so much first. Well, there's a historical precedence that was put into place here. So back in the day, college was predominantly for men. I've talked about this before in previous podcasts. And it became, available to men, minorities, women, anyone, older students, younger students. And basically for anyone could pretty much just go to college. And colleges were springing up left and right because going to college separated you from the masses, meaning that maybe you had the potential to become a manager of people or you could become more specialized in computer science or veterinary medicine or nursing or what have you. And mind you, all of these careers did not require all of these skills, certifications, and collegiate level of schooling back in the day. None of this even really mattered. So we're going to explain why all of a sudden we need all of these fancy degrees to do certain things. I mean, a physical therapy degree now is considered a doctorate, whereas I don't even think 15 years ago, you basically needed a bachelor's degree, if that, maybe even associates. Much like nurses now, there's all these different levels of nurses and all types of these different occupations where you require some sort of baseline cert and it just spirals into becoming some sort of degree that you need or the job requires that you need. But let's think about all of this because there's so much to talk about when it comes to college education. I'm relatively passionate about this because I was a middle class guy and I basically paid my own way and I took out $35,000 worth of loans, paid them all back, and here we are. So I just know this pain of the average American, and I've seen a lot of my peers who were born very, very wealthy who didn't have to deal with this and don't understand the circumstances by which normal people have to pay these things off and cope with going to bed at night knowing, am I ever going to pay off my loans? Am I ever going to earn enough money to pay these things back? Am I ever going to be able to start a family? Am I ever going to be able to purchase a home? Am I ever going to be able to pay off my car? I mean, these are what average and poor people think about. And as the cost of college continues to go up, these issues have to be wrestled with still. I mean, as to whether or not how things are going to be paid for, or if they're going to be paid for at all, or if you're going to have 2 kids instead of 3 kids. I mean, there's all of these decisions that have to be made that are born out of college costing so much. So college always used to be very, very, very cheap back in the day. And as more people started piling on to going to college, it left or maybe shuttered some people from getting into colleges that otherwise thought they would wanted to. And so what ended up happening was the colleges weren't growing fast enough for students to all be admitted right at once. And maybe some people fell by the wayside. But really what it was is people started to soon learn that college was a valuable thing to go through. It was a valuable process. It was a degree that definitely garnered some weight and proclivity for you to achieve something more in life. So minorities, women, other people from poor backgrounds started going to college. And next thing you know, the government says, hey, we want everyone to go to college. It's the best thing ever. I think we need an educated electorate and citizenry. So they started and created the student loan program. So therein lies the problem. The reason college costs so much is the advent of student loans issued by the federal government and now backed by the federal government per about 10 years ago during the Obama administration, sealing the deal on that. So all that is happening, really, really simply put, it can be reduced down to this. When the federal government offers student loans, and when they offer these student loans and they're backed in blood, basically, they're guaranteed to be made whole to the universities by the federal agency that bestowed the loans upon the students, it basically guaranteed that students would be debt slaves. So what it did is I want to say this a little more simply. If the government says, here is $50,000 per year student to borrow, that basically means a bidding war is going to incite amongst all of the college to keep raising the price of college to meet that of the amount of student loan allotment given to the student. So simply put, prices of college have risen over the past few decades because the amount of federal student loans offered continues to go up. So we're seeing a bid up in the price of college education. So the loans are easily accessible to poor people, middle-class people. But when they get their hands on the money, the cost of college just continues to rise year in and year out. And people want to wonder why. And colleges have created this giant racket around building football stadiums and very nice locker rooms and beautiful cafeterias and dining halls and hiring distinguished staff and bloating their salaries and benefits packages. And this is happening at a public and private university level. And so because they have the access to all this cash that students are forking over via the federal student loan program, colleges continue to enrich themselves and build themselves up and become more show-offy, trying to allure students. And really that zest and fervor on campus amongst the happy student body and all of them partying and drinking and experiencing all of the clubs and activities and going to football games. This is all fun, and it definitely attracts people who are prospective students who are 17 or 18 years old who have cash in their hand now because the government bestowed that upon them. So most of the time, people just go to college, and if they're not studying something of serious rigor like computer science or pre-med or pre-law, which would be a big mistake, pre-law these days for 99% of people pursuing that path because of the glut of attorneys we have out there, people, for the most part, aren't really taking school too seriously. I mean, maybe they're getting some decent grades, but there's really no plan. So when people show up to four-year school and they want to study some bullshit major, some humanity major that lends itself to no job or return on investment, they end up just partying for 4 years, maybe elongating that for another year, getting laid and joining a frat, just experiencing this college lifestyle that the colleges promotes, the balance between the books and the fun, so to speak. So people go there and they're ushered in like a herd in droves because their high school guidance counselors are telling them, look, you still need to go to college because this will be a great benefit to you down the road. It'll really set you apart from people and allow you to earn more income. So yeah, it's an investment. Just take out this massive loan. You're investing in yourself when it couldn't be further from the truth, what they're saying. What's going on is people are going to school in high school, getting terrible advice from their guidance counselors, getting horrible advice from their teachers, getting even stupider advice from their parents and their peers, and they're stuffing themselves into these 4-year degrees, which are completely worthless and they're garbage. Probably 50% of the majors, I think there's north of 150 majors at many college schools, especially these mega universities. I mean, most of them just don't serve any purpose at all. You're not learning a shred. You're partying. You're getting fucked up. You're getting laid. You're just having all these experiences that you otherwise would have as an adult when you were working. Just you don't have money in your pocket. And to the extent that you do have your money in the pocket, it's a loan. And you're really just paying the day of reckoning down the road when you graduate and life gets real. But the bottom line is this too. I mean, people are going to school, and because all these people are going to school, if you have 100 people graduating with a business degree from every single school in the country, I mean, the business degree means nothing versus you having maybe 5 or 6 people graduating with a business degree at other universities all over the country. That degree means a hell of a lot more when there's few people doing it. It's scarcity, right? So like employers are looking for that scarce, coveted college degree that's really fancy and means something. It shows that you learned a great deal about business and you were a good fit to be a middle manager. But now what it's turned into is everybody has this. So it's basically the same prerequisite as going to high school. So you basically see your college degree being an extension of a high school degree because it's just one and the same at this point. I mean, anyone who's anyone who's not a complete dumbass can graduate college in a basics humanities or gen ed or business or marketing or communications degree, HR, what have you. These aren't hard things to acquire. They're very, very simple. You can do that while getting laid and getting fucked up and going to sporting events and going to concerts and, generally just not going to class because half these lectures are filmed. You're not even required to show up half the time. We're not even getting to know your professor or really learning anything about the subject at all, just stealing the notes from somewhere's online or cheating on your exams. I mean, colleges are fraught with people just cheating and stealing shit offline and students not giving a fuck and just trying to scrape by and graduate with that piece of paper so they can say they enjoyed their 4 years, they partied, they met some people, they had some friendships. Hopefully they ever last. If not, then they really got a debt load, no friendships and no job. So for most people, they try to maintain and keep a few friends outside of college, which is great. And that's probably the only thing that really made sense for them because when they graduate, they have roughly $30,000 in student loans if they're lucky, because that's the average. And if they're not lucky, maybe they have 50 or 60, and this is just undergrad we're talking, and then they get into the workforce and they realize their jobs prospects are bleak. They might need to move and they might have not enough money to move. And so they move back into their parents and they're scraping by and they say, oh, by the way, I want to find a girlfriend at this point because I'm done getting laid and having one night stands. When they go out to get a girlfriend, the girls realize the guys are unattractive because they have no money and no future, and their degree they got was basically, pretty superficial and a waste of time. So most people are making catastrophic mistakes going to college. There needs to be far less people going to college. So what the federal government needs to do is it needs to stop offering the federal student loan program and stop guaranteeing these loans. They need to completely stop doing it 100%. If an intelligent business wanted to see people acquire degrees, they would pay for students or people to get these degrees. Likewise with colleges in general, if they thought that their degree was so worthwhile that they'd be almost paying the students to show up there. And then they would be able to sell these students to the employers per se, or they would have very, very cheap prices at college because they knew that they had to compete with the other schools around them offering this really important program that'll benefit people's lives so much. But instead we have the opposite. There's no competition to lower costs and eliminate the bureaucracy and the bloated nature of academia. Instead, it's the opposite. It's just this bidding war of who can spend and waste the most money and look the most impressive with their ball stadiums and their plazas and whatever the hell else is on campus. They're attracting all these programs. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm covering a lot of bases here, but the reason college costs so much is simply put the federal student loan program. I mean, that needs to be nixed completely. I mean, who's to say that people couldn't go to a private bank to get a loan on these things? Some people would say, well, there'd be some loan sharks out there who would charge interest rates that are astronomical. Well, I'd rather have a private bank do that because then they are on the hook for the folly of the student not being able to pay back the loan. I mean, people from high school could go and show their report card and their grades and their ambitions and their plans and their intentions to private lenders. And these lenders could make a determination if someone could get a loan or not. And that would fix a lot of this. Then the cost wouldn't be bore by the citizenry and the taxpayer. Moreover, it'd be paid by themselves and the private banks and the fools who made the loans to some of these students. But this is a world that people probably think is really wacky, what I'm talking about, but it just makes a lot more sense than the price of college continuing to escalate. What we need is major deflation in the cost of colleges. We need state universities to get lean and mean. They need to slash the size of their budgets. They need to completely diminish and remove the programs of no value for which students acquire next to no money and no ROI when they graduate, and just fix everything. I mean, universities are just taking advantage of the policies put in place by the federal student loan program. That's all they're doing. So you can't help but blame them. It's a giant racket. It's everything from the counseling and people paying to have their children get into elite schools, because the reason they're doing this is the elite schools are the ones that show that maybe they have a little more clout among some of these big name employers, or you'll get further or better graduate school program offerings if you go to one of these fancier schools. So there's parents of the very, very wealthy just paying their way in, just like that Hollywood scandal, for their children to go there and acquire these accolades, which is just a sheet of paper. So basically just go to a fancier school and get fucked up for 4 years, emerge and just say you were that much smarter because you went to a school that had a better name recognition. Whereas maybe I'm a student twice as hardworking and smart as you went to a shitty no-name college. Because they really just made that decision for whatever financial reason. And then they go out and they can't get the job that this really rich person's parents got for them, essentially by getting them into this really fancy school. So you see all these like crazy problems out there. I mean, the poor people and the middle class people are getting fucked the most because they're the ones who have to stand the most to lose. I mean, the rich, wealthy person whose parents just pay their way, cut a check for all 4 years, which that's increasingly diminishing because college is getting so outrageous. But to the extent that that still goes on, because it does, I have many friends who are in that camp. I mean, yeah, that doesn't really affect them. Their parents cut a check and they're free and clear of any issues, the student that is, and they go into the working world. And if they get a shitty job that doesn't pay dick, well, it doesn't really matter because they didn't pay anything. They just wasted time, really. And maybe that degree will pay off in 10 or 20 years. And someone says, oh, wait a minute, you have a college degree? I didn't know that. Here's an extra $2,000. But I don't know. The whole thing is just really, really bizarre and messed up. But I wanted to just explain why college costs so much. I mean, what we need is people using their hands. And when I say we need this, I'm not imposing my will. I'm just talking about the economy and the structural unemployment therein. I mean, there are things to go to college for that makes a lot of sense. And there are trades that make a ton of sense. And the prices of all these things are bloated and through the roof because of government. So it's a shame that some of the jobs that actually make sense for you to go to college for still cost way too much to get that degree. It's bullshit. I mean, pharmacist is one of those examples. I mean, you're making $100,000 plus and you're a pharmacist probably starting off at $125, $130 conservatively. but you're going into 150, 175 grand worth of debt when it's all said and done with your undergrad. If you're not having a silver spoon lifestyle, your parents financing most of it, if you're not living with your parents, it's just kind of a weird thing. It's like, oh my God. So basically you're just saying, I'm going to pay all this money to earn all this money. That's all you're doing. I mean, I get that there's work in between, but there's a lot of people who can do that. But a lot of people are rational, intelligent. Like, I'm not going to do all that work just to pay all this money down. It doesn't make sense. In the long run, you're fine. But in my case, I just wanted to get the fanciest bachelor's degree I could possibly attain and then make as much money as I possibly could. I grabbed a 4-year degree and I made 100 grand plus in 4 or 5 years. But that has nothing to do with the degree I got. It was all gutty. It was all moving around and hiking my way up the corporate ladder and now getting out of it that I've experienced that and I'm done with it. But I don't know. That story is not the same for everybody, but I know the experience of moving around and sacrificing and paying off these loans and looking around at others who are not doing that. And I genuinely feel bad for those who were going through what I am, but just don't understand the nature of this beast like I do and are not willing to make the sacrifices. I mean, capitalism calls for sacrifices and under-consuming in the short run to enjoy the long run, but it's doubly bad when you have the government working against you, propping up the prices of college education. It's just fucking terrible. So I would encourage people to take a gap year or two in between high school and college and really reflect and think about what you want to do. I mean, sure, pick up a job in a field you find interesting, intern for very, very cheaply, live with your parents, conserve cash. Don't make any monster decision without laying out the chips and seeing what path you're going to follow and what the light at the end of the tunnel looks like, because it might be dark if you're going into it blindly and you're taking humanities and you're graduating 100 grand in debt. It just doesn't do anything for you. You might as well just pitch in the towel on having a family or a house at that point. No, you're going to have to delay those things until your 30s. And it's even worse for women because they have that biological time clock, which I've alluded to. I mean, it's definitely worse for them than it is men. I mean, men have a little bit more time to get their act together, get their finances in order. But I don't know, it's terrible. And then as it pertains to millennials, the people I'm talking to right now, you guys out there, I mean, this is just messed up because all you see is people advocating for billionaires to pay for people's student loans or for the taxpayer to pay off people's student loans or to end the delinquencies and the defaults through taxpayer funds or to make college free, in air quotes, whatever that means. I mean, none of this is free. The consequences should be borne by that of the individual taking out the loans and making the rash decisions, even if it's the government that foisted them the bad options. I mean, it's sad as a society that education's so backwards coming from the top and from high schools and from culture, but sometimes you got to see through that. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about being woke in the real sense, not woke in the leftist stupid woke term, but being woke is in seeing through government's bullshit and how government's hurting people. So we don't need to pay off people's student loans. We need people to endure the suffering. It sounds horrible. And going forward, we need not make those mistakes again as a society. That we should impart the wisdom from dealing with the student loans onto our children and say, don't go to college at all. But if you do, make sure you have a damn good plan to support yourself later on and provide for yourself the things and the lifestyle you want. And then if we're going to advocate for education, realize that you can learn most of the stuff you learn in college online, sitting down for free, and that learning a trade is incredibly cheap and can reap huge dividends. And you can also be self-employed in that environment. And then to learn all of the internet businesses there is to start. I mean, if you're one of these people who suffer through the student loan thing and you're basically kind of fucked and really just tricked by society into going to college and wasting some time there. I mean, the least you could do is at least steer your kids in the right direction by making sure they learn a little bit about economics and personal finance before they make any of these decisions. But what we need as society is just to take out a loan, pay it back. Don't take out a loan at all, or just tell the ruling class, look, we don't want the federal student loan program anymore. What we want is private lending. What we want is less people being diverted into areas where there's no jobs. And that means freedom, voluntary cooperation, and private education. No more public schooling at all. I mean, that sounds radical. And like I said, I mean, that's not going to happen overnight. We're always going to have the State University of New York or UNC or USC, all of these state schools, University of Minnesota, they're never going to go away. So just advocate for them to make sure there's utter transparency in where their dollars goes. And if their dollars are tethered to the state budgets and the states are drowning in debt, that the school needs to be helpful and a benefactor of the state's, balance sheet and not sucking up a lot of resources that the state doesn't have. And I don't know. I mean, there's got to be ways to look at this. I mean, departments need to be nixed. A lot of overhead needs to be cut out. I mean, a lot can be done for the students on a public level. I mean, libertarians know that we shouldn't be having this public education outlet anyway, but to the extent that we have it, they need to get lean and mean. I mean, they need to chop down on the salaries, eliminate a lot of the pensions, make people save independently. Just make sure students are getting more out of the experience and just getting fucked up and going to football games and concerts, which is super fun. Believe me, I did all of that. I mean, my whole thing was just getting a really fancy degree and getting by and getting my B's, and I did that and it worked. But again, this is not for everybody. Not everyone was like me. I was looking around in college and seeing all of the dumbasses and sheep around me working very, very hard to get this A while I'm enjoying my leisure and partying, and we're all on the same graduation stage, and then we emerge 5 years later post-school and making double all of them. I mean, that's just who I am. Not everybody is like that. I mean, most people are sucked into the experience thinking it's going to pay dividends for them, for which it's not. They're just foolish, and that's most of society. It's not our fault as libertarians that happened. It's quite to the contrary. We're the ones seeing through the bullshit, seeing through the academic nonsense, and just seeing the culture on campuses is absolutely terrible as far as free speech, hate speech, and division of race and ethnicities, and just the people always like just being pissed off at fraternity lifestyles, if that's like the biggest problem there is in college. The biggest problem is that college is a humongous Ponzi scheme, and everyone there is being ripped off and being basically exploited because they're fucking fools. I can't say they were exploited because they voluntarily signed up for these things, but most college professors, by and large, care about their subjects, but many of which are lazy. They don't work a lot. They have a lot of summers off. They take a lot of sabbaticals. They know their job is basically a cakewalk for what they get paid. And I know a lot of them deep down in their heart know they're ripping off the students, that they're part of this giant juggernaut, this giant racket, which is not putting people who are young in a better position to succeed in life. I mean, a real life coach for a young person would say there's jobs out there that you can earn money in. There's jobs that you cannot. And this is the path you got to chart to get those jobs. And that probably doesn't mean going to college and getting a degree in psychology and then being, I don't know what to do anymore. I just know I have a lot of debt and there's no jobs for me. And then all these people are victims. Our generation is all fucking victims for the most part. When they say they want free college or they bitch about college costs too much and somebody else should pay for it, it's wrong. It's morally wrong and evil. No. College can be important for some employers. It can be attractive for certain occupations because sometimes it's downright necessary per the government regulation. So to the extent that it's necessary, it should be cheap. And if we want it to be cheap, we need the government to get out of it completely. Gone. That's it. I mean, I can talk about this till I'm blue in the face, but government student loans has ruined the employment outlook of people who get these degrees. It has ruined the cost of college. It has ruined people's psyches. It has made them regret what they did in college. It has made them regret their career occupation. It has entrapped them in a death spiral of poverty. It has made them kickstart their life later in terms of buying a home or getting married or having children. It has enabled them to watch their rich friends graduate with the same job they have, but their rich friends travel on their parents' dime and post on Instagram while they're sitting at home with their thumb up their ass trying to keep the heat on without getting shut off because they can't afford it because they're juggling all of their bills, namely their student loan bill, which is probably their biggest bill because they can't afford to buy a nice house or rent something that's nice or have even a car for that matter. They're driving around a clunker. I mean, you people know who you are out there. And I'm not pinpointing those people and making fun of them. What I'm doing is saying it's awful society what we've done with the student loan program, and we need the Bernie Sanders of the world, and the Andrew Yangs of the world, and the Liz Warrens of the world to just shut their fucking pie holes about people getting free college. Now we need this, that, or the other thing. Most of the people going to college don't need to go. Most people are drowning in debt. Most people are not getting the job they want. And the whole thing's a fucking sham and a shit show, and people reinvent themselves. They get a trade. They go work for a business. They switch careers altogether. They double the amount of debt they would have otherwise had, but at least they found a way and found something a little bit happier in, and maybe their lifestyle's not as, not as robust as they once would have imagined it to be, but at least they're heading on the right track, and they've learned the lesson, and they can bestow that lesson upon their children. So that's what we have is in terms of college education, why it costs so much. And again, I feel bad. We need more free markets. We need more liberty. We need all private education to be in higher education. We do not need public education. But this is not stuff we can eradicate overnight. I know this. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I might be a libertarian, but I know we cannot just get rid of these massive public institutions. They're going to be here until the world just goes into a giant inferno for all I know. So all we can do is hold them accountable and make sure they reduce their costs and make it more attractive for people to go to public schools, and make me sick saying that, just to have the private schools bring their prices down, because that's all we can really do right now, because it's going to be tough to change the federal student loan program. I think what it's going to be is people just ending up not going to school and market forces working their way out just decades after they should have when this bubble blows up, because the amount of delinquencies and defaults out there is insane. The amount of people of paying their loans out over 30 years or just using inheritance to pay their loans or whatever the hell they're doing. It's just, The whole thing is a shit show. And I want people to know it's not the free market. It's not liberty. It's all government intervention. It's all the public student loan program. That's all it is. It's just politicians who want to give everyone everything ultimately end up taking everything from everybody, taking away their dignity, taking away their money, taking away their ability to travel, to buy homes, to start families. That's all they're doing when they're saying we need more federal student loans and they need to be guaranteed by the federal government. The only thing that really makes sense is that the student's on the hook for that and that cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. That's a really, really good thing, because I need our peers to feel the pain of this a little bit, because in order for people to learn lessons, sometimes they have to endure something that's not so pleasant. And if they don't understand the situation, they're going to come to understand it by paying off their own loans as large as they are, even if their parents help them out or their friends or their employer, or whoever the hell does through an inheritance, or they earn more money down the road. They need to be responsible and realize because they're responsible, they endured a little bit of pain. But the pain was that much worse because the federal government was totally irresponsible, in addition to that of the Federal Reserve and Congress, for even enabling this environment of people going to college, getting fucking obliterated and getting laid, and not ending up with something that's fruitful for the rest of their life. That's all I got, homies. Thank you very much.